Welcome to At Home Is Now. My name is Wanako Overhuber, and I'm your guest. Not your guest, your host. And today my guest is Queen Michele. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Wanako, for having me. I am honored to be here.
Well, so let's start out into what you're excited about today and in this time. What's keeping you excited? What's keeping your joy and your happiness going, and what that's all about? We'd love to hear that.
What's keeping me excited today? What's keeping me excited is the curriculum that I designed called 52 Insights for Gen Alpha, a conscious curriculum. But before I start talking about the curriculum, because it lights me up, I have to kind of talk about how did I get there? How did I arrive at this happiness? And that started when I retired from teaching. 27 years. I'm an elementary and middle school teacher, and I retired in 2015 with 27 years. Now, when I first retired, I kind of took a look at that first pension check, and I said, "Oh, wow, well, that'll pay the rent." And I realized immediately that I would have to continue to work in some kind of capacity in order to supplement the pension, which was fine. I started out that first year after retirement. I did all kinds of things, Wanako. I was an Uber driver and a Lyft driver, and I did some online teaching for children in China. I did some curriculum design, remote work. And one of my coolest jobs that I love so much was I was a shuttle driver for a transportation company that serviced the railroad. So I was taking conductors and engineers to and from their train. So cool, right? But after a year of that, that kind of hustle to supplement, I had the thought, hey, wait a minute. I'm going to always have to do this. I'm going to always have to work to supplement my pension. And I didn't want to be 70 years old saying, welcome to Walmart. I saw them out there because I was out there. You see them at airports and at Walmart and in retail, and they're Uber drivers and we're out there, and they're out there, not because they want to be, but because they have to be. And I just didn't want to be in a position where I worked and worked and worked until I couldn't work anymore due to age and health. And then I would live substandardly because I wasn't working. I kind of felt, I just had this epiphany that I owe no one or no thing my life. Now, had I not had that epiphany, say I just stayed on, and I stayed on the wheel is what I call it, or I stayed in the matrix, then I would only be working to pay bills. See, there would be no weekend getaways. There would be no fine dining or no concerts or anything like that. I would work, pay bills, work, pay bills. And I said, no. I said, no, I'm not giving over my life to the system, to the matrix. That's how I felt. And so I started researching top 10 places to retire, and this was back in 2016. And at that time it was, Costa Rica, Panama, Thailand, Mexico, Nicaragua, Ecuador, Colombia, and so I did an extensive research. However, Mexico checked all the boxes for me. And I wound up, Mexico has 32 states. I wound up in the state of Jalisco. Jalisco houses the largest freshwater lake in the country of Mexico. It's called Lake Chapala. Now, surrounding that lake are little towns and villages. And on the north shore of that lake is the largest expat community in the country of Mexico. Expat being expatriates, those who are citizens of one country but reside in another. And that Lake Chapala region, it checked all the boxes for me. First and foremost, location. At the time when I retired, I was living in Atlanta, and it was a 3.5 hour nonstop straight flight from Atlanta to Guadalajara, which is the capital of Jalisco. And from Guadalajara, it was just like a 30-minute ride into town. Okay, so location is one. The second was climate. That Lake Chapala region has been voted by National Geographic to be the second best climate in the world. And that's because it's eternally spring. Now, it's a wet spring and a dry spring, but it's spring nonetheless. So, second box, climate. And then the third one was, of course, that expat community. It made for a really soft landing. Okay. So, after extensive research, uh, in December of 2017, I moved out the country and I moved to the Lake Chapala area. Now, it is there that, wow, a whole new, just living abroad just opened up. It was like my crown chakra just shot open. I mean, like this was always the journey, it was the magic of the mountains and the magic of the lake. They have a vortex there as well. And for the first time, uh, I was able to pretty much take a journey inward. Okay. And in that journey and through meditation, I connected with, met, and began being led, guided, and directed by my soul self. That's what I call. Some people say higher self, spirit, or whatever. I call it my soul self. And it was from there that it was inside. As I believe any and everything you ever wanted to know about anything in this entire world is on the inside. Um, and from from there, I started writing. I developed and created my own brand called Considerations of the Soul. I started writing books. One of the books, my very first book, was Considerations, a guide for moving abroad. Okay, um, just to kind of let people know, hey, this is possible. This happened. You can do this. And then again, because I had this awakening, if you will, spiritual awakening, I started writing about that. There was 52 insights for living new earth now. There was the road to well-being. There was traveling home together, which became, and which is a new earth guidebook. It also comes with a handbook because it's so meaty. It's just like 8 chapters, but it's so meaty that it needed a workbook to go with it. So I had this awakening, and through that, books, like I said, a brand, and and I lived in the Lake Chapala area for like 4 years. And towards the right after that fourth year, I had got together with some of the gurus lakeside, the guru in meditation, the guru in movement, guru in art. Uh, and they had a very big A Course in Miracles community as well, So I gathered them because I was led to do an 8 month workshop every third Saturday of the month from 10 to 3. Uh it was going to be called The Soul's Journey. Right. So through my writings, blogs, videos, audios, uh, we were going to go on this journey inward. And then like I said, I had the other gurus there to also do their part, in this journey. Had a great facility. I gave a presentation. People signed up. Yes. And then I got the call. That call was from home. And Pop was 99 with dementia. Mom was 86 with her own set of medical issues. And they had both left the house via ambulance within a week of each other. Now, when I got there, and there is my hometown of Detroit, Michigan, born and raised, they were both in a rehabilitation center. He was on one end of the hallway and she was on the other. Now, I was under the impression that everything was, being taken care of, at home and what have you. I have two older brothers, Dumb and Dumber. And I was led to believe that everything was fine. But when I got there, it became very apparent very soon that once they came out of the rehabilitation center, that they needed someone to care for them full time. I became my parents' full time caregiver back in this day. So all that I was about to do, I laid it down. It got, pushed to the side. So that 52 insights for living New Earth now and traveling home together, all of that just kind of laid it down. And I became my parents' full-time caregiver. I stayed there in the States for 3.5 years and 4 consecutive winters. Now, Mom and Pop passed within 10 months of each other in 2022. And still there, handling things. Uh, my niece, my niece had a birthday. And I wanted to give her a gift, of course. And I kind of looked over. I said, oh, you know what? I'm going to give her this book. I'm going to give her the 52 Insights for Living New Earth Now. A bottle of wine and a candle, Here you go, niece. Happy birthday. Now, she looked at it. She started thumbing through the book. And she said, oh, Auntie, she said, this would be great for high school. Now, my niece is a girls basketball, high school basketball coach, among other things. And when she said that, I said, you're right. I mean, it's just sitting there, it's just over there. I said, you're right. I kind of got a little check on the inside. Then I spoke with a relative. I kind of told her what my niece said. She's also a retired administrator and teacher. And she said, oh, no. She said that would be perfect for middle school. And I mean, something exploded inside of me. Ding, 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 boom, 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 just kind of went off. And I was like, wow. Well, who is middle school, though? Who's middle school? I mean, I've been out of the game, 10 years now? Who are middle school students, So that's when the deep dive took place, because I thought about that. And like, you're right. So I take this deep dive. And that's when I discovered Generation Alpha. That's who middle school is right now. And it became very clear again, because I lived my life from within out, that all that work that I did, the 4 years I was there in Mexico in the beginning, it was never for the audience that I intended it to be for. It was never for them. It was for Generation Alpha. Okay. It was for, and had I known that, probably would have messed it up, So that's how perfect the universe is. That work was never for who I thought it was. So I intended it for. It was for Generation Alpha. So who is Generation Alpha? Well, Generation Alpha was born between 2010 in 2024. The oldest of that generation just turned 13 last year. They're the kids of the millennials and some of the X's who got in the game kind of late. They are the first generation to be born fully in the 21st century. What that means is that they've been clicking and swiping since infancy. They will be the largest generation in the history of the world, and they are responsible for the conscious evolution of humanity. Check out their tag, Alpha. What does Alpha mean? Beginning. Now, as I'm gathering this information and learning, and then I'm getting these downloads and an understanding of how my skill set as an educator and a curriculum designer has come together. And what happened was that 52 Insights for Living New Earth Now was birthed, basically, 52 Insights for Gen Alpha, a conscious curriculum. Okay, now, so what I took, what is 52 Insights? Well, during 2021, every Thursday across my platforms, because remember, I was out there. I had the brand and I had a YouTube channel and, Instagram, Facebook, across all of my platforms, I put out an original quote, something that came from my blogs or my books or just straight through meditation, an original quote, 52. And I brought that together in one presentation. And next to that quote is, of course, a reflection page and then a deeper dive into the audio or the video or a reading, a blog that takes them into a deeper dive of that. So now what I created was a lesson plan for each quote. So 52 lessons with activities and practices, all my work gathered into this presentation. And I was able to pilot that program. Here I am still in Detroit because the universe is perfect. I was always supposed to do that. I was always supposed to come back, for this to happen. I piloted it in 2 middle schools, in the Detroit area. Now that was really hard getting into 2 schools, but I was able to get in. I did pilot the program, and boy, I learned so much. And one of the main things, maybe the first thing that I learned going back into the school after being retired for 10 years, and first of all, it's quite different now. It is, Generation Alpha. I'm in middle school. And one of the biggest lessons I learned as I dealt with the students and the teachers and piloting the curriculum is that unconscious can't teach consciousness. The unconscious cannot teach consciousness. In other words, you can't take them on a journey that you yourself haven't been on, okay? And pretty much kind of refuse to go on in a sense. And I get it. I get it. There's no judgment in any way, shape, or form. Teachers are putting out fires all day long, and they don't know who they're really teaching. They when I was in school, we had classes like home economics, auto mechanics, and typing, and carpentry. Okay, getting us prepared for the world in which we were going to be in. But see, Generation Alpha is already in spaces and in platforms free from parental influence. They're in spaces and in platforms that their parents don't even understand. And I get it, because when those millennials put that tablet or that phone in their child, in their child's hands. They was like, whoa, man, I can get the dishes done, or I can get this paper done, or I can, because when I was growing up, Sesame Street went off, you see, but that phone and that tablet, that's 24/7. They have only been taught, for the most part, externally. Their world is external, and they're going places that we're not going. However, we should, and it's extremely important that we put the tools uh, and equip them with the tools that's necessary to navigate their world. They are lacking the social, emotional intelligence that's necessary for them to navigate that external world. There's no classes for, like it was when I was going to school, that helped prepare us for this world. So my curriculum fits into the framework of social and emotional intelligence. And that's how I find that I'll be able to truly maneuver into the school systems. Now, uh, that was the second thing that I learned that was extremely important. First of all, unconscious can't teach consciousness. And I am now currently, and that's what I'm very, very excited about. I am currently taking a course through San Diego University, and I'm learning how to integrate AI into the curriculum. See, as it stands to date, it's not marketable or even consumable for its target audience. I must integrate and have a platform where AI is there, because that's their world. That's where they're going, and I'm so excited because I knew very little about uh, AI, but now I'm specifically learning what platforms and what's necessary uh, to enrich the curriculum with AI. Now, a big part of the curriculum is taking them, Gen Alpha, on an internal journey, because again, there's no balance from the external into the internal, right? That's where they're missing it. See, people, Gen Alpha included, over time have attached and identified with the stories they've been told about themselves from their families and communities, but much more for Gen Alpha through what? External stimuli. See, those attachments, mainly for Gen Alpha, external, because they've been swiping and clicking since infancy became their belief systems, and which determine how they perceive themselves in the world around them. There is no balance between their external and internal world, which has caused a lack in social and emotional growth and development. They're a different breed, and we need to look at them in that way. So, um, although my curriculum is rich and the content is impactful and it's needed, this 12-week course that I'm taking for 52 Insights to become an AI enriched adaptive learning SEL curriculum. uh, Adaptive learning, it's a software, and this is what I'm learning, and this is what I'm so excited about. Adaptive learning software is an innovative and cutting edge methodology which aims to personalize education by developing learning paths, or in the case of my curriculum, internal journeys for students in real time. I'm really excited about that. Uh, every day that I'm taking this course, I am fine tuning the curriculum to the point where I know more than likely by the start of next year, the first quarter of next year, man, I'm going to have, or I know I'm going to have ed tech companies, schools, districts, ever bidding for this curriculum, and I'm excited about that. I had a 7-year-old grandson who is Gen Alpha, and one day he will come across this curriculum. I'm just sure of it. And also, I'm excited about the fact that once this is out here in this way, it can be modified. It can be modified all the way down to kinder. You know, they can modify it so that starting maybe from kinder to first grade, they're getting this very impactful and important information, content to help them navigate that external world internally. Okay, from the inside out.
Wow. 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 So you're really, really, really excited. That's really wonderful. So when you go about this reworking your content into something that an AI can work with, right? What does that demand from you in terms of the thought processes that go through your mind? What are the things you have to be aware of in order to say, okay, from there, AI can take up this model of thinking and interact with students, for instance, or what is the ideal behind that?
Okay, so the curriculum focuses on self awareness through activities that foster mindfulness, self management, relationship skills, social awareness, and conscious decision making. That's the social and emotional framework right there. Those components that makes up the social emotional framework that's been out for years, globally in some aspect. And so, what my curriculum will do, watch this, 52 Insights will promote a self directed internal, that's that balance that's lacking, learning path, or as I like to say, journey through personalized lessons from the curriculum according to the Myers Briggs type indicator theory, which assesses the personality of an individual and suggests that each person is unique in their own self. Therefore, they will take their own unique SEL journey. See, the learning path is the journey. Now, because everyone they're at different social and emotional intelligence levels, right? They're just as diverse as the way they learn. So the levels of social and emotional intelligence in Gen Alphas is just as diverse as the levels of how they ordinarily learn and retain content. So a personalized journey inward fosters a deeper understanding and retention of the material. I see this inward journey will uh, equip them to be able to make those conscious decisions outside of all of that external stimuli, that external influence, you see. It won't be so, they'll be able to navigate that ego driven uh, society that awaits them that they're in right now, you know, um, through activities and practices. Because here's the thing: once one identifies ego, and that's the whole thing about that journey, is understanding ego, the separation that you need from ego and your soul self or your higher self. If I could, I can explain it a little bit better. I got a small paragraph out of Traveling Home Together that helps explain the ego and what this curriculum will help them be able to do by taking this internal journey. There was one voice within when you were first born into the world. It had your undivided attention. As you grew into your humanness, a new voice was introduced through your senses. What you saw, heard, tasted, felt, and smelled drew you more and more into the physical world, and you lost touch with that non physical connection that your flesh now clothed. You also lost touch with the essence of who you really are as the world took over and the still small voice became smaller. The new stronger voice that grew within and pretty much took over was that of your ego. Through programming and conditioning, the ego grew stronger and began running things internally. You attached and identified with the stories you were being told about yourself. Those attachments became your belief systems, which determine how you perceived yourself and the world around you. Those perceptions have become the realities in which you have lived for many years. The true essence of you is still just as present within as ego. However, it can remain silent. It can remain unheard. See, the ego it has a general purpose, but it's not the general. The ego is a thought producer. Okay, it is a built-in defense mechanism. That whole fight or flight thing, and it's a processor. That's the ego. Now, the ego has a general purpose, but it's not the general. So it needs to be placed in the back seat where it can serve generally. And your soul self is up front, driving, leading, guiding, and directing you. And that's what New Earth is, actually. New Earth, or living New Earth now, it's extremely possible because all it takes is an alignment with your soul self. You're already connected, but are you aligned? See, you'll always, forever be connected, but are you aligned? And once aligned, now you're being led, guided, and directed by your soul self, who knows all. See, and when you're aligned, you hear that. You hear that voice say, go left, go right, sit down, be quiet, turn around, call him, talk to her. And all those cooperating components come together for you to walk this path, this journey, fulfilling your purpose, on that path of least resistance. I live by three principles: non-judgment, non-attachment, and non-resistance. So once you resonate in New Earth, which is not a place, it's a state of consciousness, right? It's not a place you go. It's a state of consciousness where you resonate, where you reside, where you take up residence in this state of consciousness. New Earth, they call it New Earth. They call it fifth dimension. Uh, whatever it's called, it's a state of consciousness. And in order to maintain residence or reside there, one has to can hold a certain bandwidth or frequency or vibration. A state of consciousness will hold you in that frequency so that you do live. Although you're in this physical realm, you do live New Earth now because you're connected. Always connected. You're aligned with that still small voice that you came into the world with. your soul self, leading, guiding, directing, living new earth now. And I, through this curriculum, I'm so excited that all that, like I said, all that work was never for the audience I intended it for. It was always for Generation Alpha. And I'm so honored to have taken my skill set with my purpose and bring it together and then uh, move, live, move, and have my beingness in this way. Lights me up.
And it's so, so beautiful to hear that. And what was also very exciting is how you came into the writing space, right? And you, because I don't know how much writing you had to do as a teacher that was inspirational writing, right? You probably had a lot of writing which was evaluating or preparing for a course or whatever else, right? But and also your observations and whatever you prepared to tell the parents or whatever, right? So this is a different style of writing, I guess. Even though you said you did develop curriculum during your work as a teacher, so you actually, like you said, you're bringing all the skill sets together, including this spiritual side that you said you had an awakening. So maybe you would like to describe a little more in depth what the insights that that were made possible through this awakening, right? I don't know if there's any description why the awakening happens. I don't know if there is, but the description of what happened and how it transformed your view of the world might be of interest to a lot of people.
Well, okay. How does one, how does one awaken? How does one awaken? How does one recognize uh, the programming and conditioning that has taken place? Listen, I was born and bred Baptist, what I call Baptist bred, Baptist dead. But anyway, how does one navigate out of that matrix, out of that system of belief? How did I say, no, you know what? I'm not going to work until I can't work anymore. I'm just not going to give over my life to you, cause it's mine. I guess we are all on that journey. We're all here on our own journey to learn our own lessons, to have our own experiences. I do believe that there is a mass awakening taking place globally, but what was that experience for me, or the biggest insight? How did I get to go inside and and recognize all of this? I never would have. I see had I stayed there, and because I could have stayed on the well. I just could have fell in line, you know what I'm saying, and worked and worked until I was old and my body was broke down and really couldn't go anywhere and live substandardly and call it a life, because that's what they said it was, right? That there you go, good job, there's your life. Um, but I guess I was always on my way here, you know, uh, to this place. And I think what propelled it for me getting inside was simply this. My daughter um, had my grandson, and I went to stay with her for a couple of months, to help her with the baby. And I had a lot of time on my hand, if I wasn't taking care of him and, home, letting them bond like, as a family. So I had a lot of time on my hand, and I came across a 21-day meditation challenge that Oprah and Deepak was giving. They had this 21-day guided meditation uh, challenge. So hey, once again, the universe is perfect. Do that. I had time, time on my hand, time. So I said, I'm gonna do that. And I did. And for 21 days, I was guided, inward, very gently, just got for 21 days. Well, about time I got back to Mexico, uh, I still had this desire, you know, to go in. But here's something about meditation is you just can't just meditate, you know, and I'll suggest to anyone, you must be guided, and you got to be guided. And when there's so many apps and things on YouTube, that can help guide you in first for a while, for a little bit, until you're comfortable by yourself, because you won't just be able to just do it by yourself. There's too much programming, too much noise, too many distractions, too much guided in. So I wanted to keep going after this 21 day, and the foundation had pretty much already been laid, right? But I still wasn't able to just go in. Went on YouTube. Again, universe being perfect. I came across a guided meditation that said, meet your higher self. And it kind of, once that kind of resonated with me. I was like, meet your higher self. So I did that particular guided meditation. And it was like with that one, it was like I was guided, and my soul self said, I got her. Thanks. I got it from here, and I was just pulled in deeper, and, I guess my soul self said, goodbye, I got her. That's it. She, foundation had already been laid with the 21 day challenge. So I was just gently pulled in by my soul. I did meet my soul self. And from then on, I wasn't using guided meditations. I could go in and hold counsel. And like I said, any and everything you ever wanted to know about anything uh, is within. And see, that's when the brand came. That's when the books started coming. I mean, that's when, again, uh, that crown chakra blew wide open, and I just, when when you're led, guided, and directed by your soul self, when you're living your life from within out, there is a difference from the person who's being ego driven, meaning that they are, it's the ego who's in the front seat running thing versus the soul self who is you're aligned with and listening to and purposefully uh, living out your soul contract here.
Yeah, you probably know this. In A Course in Miracles, there's this, it says, we are walking each other home. And you were speaking of a very similar description, right? Maybe you'd like to go into that as well.
It's so funny you would say that, because when I started writing, traveling home together, here it is right here, traveling home together. It's, like I said, it's only 8 chapters. I was in chapter 6. And this book was entitled Walking Each Other Home. It was entitled Walking Each Other Home. And I was like in chapter 6. And I met up with some friends. We were having lunch and what have you. And one of the ladies was so excited. She had just finished. She was in this what do you call that? Book club. She was in this book club, and she was so excited. She said, she was talking about the book club, and she said, yeah, and we're doing this, and the book that we're doing this, it's called Walking Each Other Home. I said, excuse me? She said, yeah, it's by Ram Dass. Do you know Ram Dass? Yeah, he has a book called Walking Each Other. And I said, you have got, and I immediately Googled it and discovered that sure enough, right? He's a spiritual guru. He had coined that phrase, walking each other home. He had a book, and whenever he's all over the place with walking each other home. I was like, wow. So I literally had to go back and come up with a different title. So it became Traveling Home Together. And I had to go back and change the kind of some of the language throughout. Same premise, and ours, his was a little bit different from mine. He was talking more or less, on the deaf end, you know, and I was talking about, the journey, but concept for the most part. And so I had to change some words and everything, and it became Traveling Home Together. And again, just 8 chapters. It's pretty thin, but it's meaty. It's like a metaphoric journey of uh, walking home from school. That's how I used it. What are some things that we do or did? I was a walker. I walked home from school, and we did certain things like holding hands, playing, taking different routes, listening, sharing goodies, letting go, catching rides, and enjoying the ride. So those are the 8 chapters, but I kind of equated to how we used to walk home from school. You had those who rode their bikes, you had walkers, you had those who were picked up, you know, all of that kind of stuff. So it's a metaphoric journey. But the bottom line is that we are all here, and I call it Earth School. I call this Earth School in the book. And the workbook that goes along with it are those practices and those exercises that help, again, to maintain that bandwidth. I talk about us being energetic beings, and it's all energy, and frequency. And I talk about the third dimension and the fourth dimension and the fifth dimension. And I give different, examples of that. And so yeah, it's a journey that we're all on. We are indeed walking each other home.
Yeah. I didn't realize how A Course in Miracles, Ram Dass, and many people have been using that idea, right, of walking each other home. And I don't know what came first and which one or where it came from. That's not my job to research that, but it's a very beautiful idea. And yet there's more to it. Of course, we're all, this journey within, this living from within. I think that's amazing way of putting it. And I think, it's how do you do that? How do you step into that? How do you let go of all this ideas of like you said, you don't judge, you don't get attached to the way things go, and you go with the flow. Or I don't know, you said it differently. Maybe you'd like to repeat how you put it.
Very good. Exactly. Those principles that I live by. Again, principles that were taught to me from the inside. Any and everything you want to know is already on the inside. I mean, even Jesus said the kingdom of God is within, right? Um, and so the principles are non-judgment, non-attachment, and non-resistance. And you're right. That's that go with the flow. Is that non-resistance. If I could, I'd like to read another little part uh out of Traveling Home Together. It says, what is ego? It is who you believe you are. Most believe, as I did, that the thinking self is who we are. That thinking self is ego. Our ego grew as our thoughts and beliefs were downloaded in us during our formative years. It feels normal to operate, function from our ego, as it does serve a general purpose, but it's not the general. Our ego is a built in defense system, thought producer, and processor. It shelves our biases, perceptions, and preferences unique to the experiences we've had. But ego grew as we strengthened, fed, and relied on it far too much. Finally, we came to believe that we were that system, producer, processor. The ego is quite satisfied with its seemingly perfect permanent role as the driver of the vessel that is you. Ego continually replays the thought patterns that put it in the front seat position, and you asleep and separated from the truth of who you truly are. Ego loves its position and will fight to stay, but it has overstepped its purpose and needs to be put back in its place, backseat, where it may still serve, but under your command. Those who are living New Earth now, uh, their ego is in the backseat.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, is there anything I haven't asked you that you'd like to share before we wrap things up?
Yet, one may ask, how do you begin putting ego in the back seat? How do you begin living from within? And my suggestion would be to definitely start with guided meditation. You won't be able to live from within if you don't go in, right? You got, and it's not easy just to get in there, because there's so many programming and conditioning that you would have to break through to get to that soul, to get to that. Now it's waiting for you. It's there. It's gentle. But I would suggest that you do guided meditations until you're comfortable enough, now that you can go in and hold counsel anytime, any place, anywhere. One of the things I used to say, having being taught and realizing that I am an observer, of the thoughts that come in. The ego produces thoughts. It's a thought producer. We got to observe those thoughts. Was when one came in that was not that of soul self, I would just simply say, and it was just amazing. That's not my thought. I don't receive that. And I mean, you talk about dissipate. Talk about just that's not my thought. I don't receive that. Just that, uh, just that quick, just that easy. But that's work, man. There's work to maintain that resonance, that bandwidth, to reside there. Uh, you got to do the work, and that's a lot of people. Those who are, unconscious. It's just, I'd rather. Mm. But I tell you, had I stayed on that wheel, had I stayed in that matrix and just said, oh, no, then there never would have been a 52 insights, which was first for Living New Earth, which is now 52 insights. That never would have happened had I just, and there's a lot who just don't want to do the work. So my suggestion would be, I guess it boils down to how bad do you want it? How bad do you want to get off that wheel? How bad do you seek or desire uh, to meet your soul self and take that journey inward? Take that journey inward. So I would start with a guided meditation, uh, and that's my suggestion to your listeners.
Yeah, beautiful. So yeah, another thing that I noticed is 52. That's the amount of weeks we have in the year. You say you have 52 lessons. Is that intentional, or is there another reason?
That's exactly intentional, because the lessons, each quote is a week of deeper dives and activities and exercise as it relates to that quote. And this is the actual book, and like I said, I'm in the course right now, and I'm learning which the software and the engines that will help me to integrate AI into this and help them take that journey inward. And I like to read the very first quote that comes out of 52 Insights for Gen Alpha, a conscious curriculum. And it says, the matrix cares not of the quality and purpose of your life here, but only of the quantity and how much you can give over to the system. You owe no one or no thing your life.
Wow. Wow. So you're like you were speaking of, it's very important to you that one makes one's own choices and not because someone or something tells you to, right?
Conscious decision making. That's what it's about. You know, relationship skills, social awareness, self management, and conscious decision making, mindfulness. See, because understand, Gen Alpha has been clicking and swiping since infancy. So that external world is all they know. And all this, I'm not saying that this is a course that someone who is unconscious would be able to teach. Matter of fact, this course is still can be still geared toward, although I'm zeroing in on Gen Alpha, that's my assignment. But high school, college, this we all need to take that journey inward. But you know how when I was in school, I said that there was a person who taught auto mechanics. Well, the English teacher didn't teach auto mechanics because the English teacher didn't know anything about the auto mechanics teacher taught auto mechanics. Well, let the conscious uh, teacher, let them just go to that class. We had classes that helped prepare us for the world we were going to live in. Can they have a class that helps prepare them for the world that they're going to live? We're not going, but can we give them a balance from that external with a little internal, and then under the guise of social and emotional intelligence, the framework that's been research based and has proven to make better students, citizens, when one, it's not that fluffy character development like, uh, from days of old. This one is, this will resonate. And I know that it will resonate with Gen Alpha and those who are newly awakened or awakening. It'll help them navigate that shift in consciousness that they're experiencing. And for Gen Alpha, it's just the tools, some tools that will equip them to navigate that external world because they're going, they're Gen Alpha.
So thank you so much, Michele, for sharing all this, for being here, for providing these ideas. And thank you everyone for joining us here, helping this podcast to get out there. Please continue to do that. And if you want to be a guest, please reach out to me because that would be so enriching for everyone. And review the podcast, let people know about it, and just generally, I'd love to have your support. And blessings to you all. And until next time, bye-bye.